The big-budget Netflix series on Cleopatra has been hit with claims of cultural vandalism over the casting of black actress Adele James.
Folks in Egypt are accusing Netflix of misrepresenting history in Netflix's new docuseries called Queen Cleopatra.
When Netflix released the trailer to Cleopatra documentary, there was outrage in the media. Like some people were offended. The outrage, the backlash was something else. You know, people were offended, and you would ask why there was so much backlash or why people were so offended by a documentary. You know, the reason was not far-fetched. It was simply because Cleopatra, who is the subject of the documentary, was acted by a black woman. Okay, that was the reason. I even saw a report somewhere that an Egyptian lawyer was suing Netflix for misrepresenting Egyptian history. The producer Jada Pinkett Smith faced a lot of insults and backlash in the media. The director of the documentary received or got her own fair share of the backlash and the insults. It was a debate that went on for days and days. It was crazy. And one would just wonder, it was just simply because a black woman was cast in the role of Cleopatra. This outrage went on for so long. Like, you see, let's get some facts straight, okay? Based on historical facts and archaeological evidences, Egypt was a land that was occupied by black people, people who looked like this, okay? It was a land occupied by black people. And before it was named Egypt, it was called Kemet. And Kemet means black lands, okay? Let's get that straight. Egypt was occupied by black people, people that looked like you, people that looked like me. I don't know you watching it, but people that looked like me, okay? The civilization and the history of Egypt spans centuries, okay? And up till today, when you go to Egypt, or the historical and archaeological facts around prove to the fact that Egypt was occupied by people, black people like you and I. We had the kingdom of Kush that is still in present-day northern Sudan and southern Egypt. And those people there are like you and I, black, even blacker than me. They look even darker than me, okay? So let's get the facts straight. That said, back to the racial identity of Cleopatra. Whether she was Caucasian, whether she was white, whether she was... it's not the point of this conversation. Although based on historical facts and documentations, Cleopatra was of Greek origin, Caucasian, European origin. That is based on historical facts, okay? And like I said, her racial identity is not the point of this video, so I'm not going to dwell on that. I want us to focus more on, the historical facts about Egypt, and then I'm going to get to the point of this video, okay? So, like I said, Egypt was occupied by black people. It was the land of the blacks and all of that. But see, when the outrage about Cleopatra and the black woman being cast as Cleopatra in the documentary, was making the rounds in the media, one would say that was a case of selective outrage. Why? Because when you look at the movie 10 Commandments, in that movie, Queen Nefertiti, who was clearly a black woman, a black queen in ancient Egypt, was portrayed as Caucasian. A European acted the role of Pharaoh in the 10 Commandments, okay? And then you see black people were cast as slaves and, servants to the royals in that movie. There was silence everywhere. Even though, going back to the fact that we have laid down before, that Egypt was the land of black people where, the people there were blacks. Now Cleopatra is portrayed by a black woman. There's outrage everywhere. No one would hear of it. People are suing, people are claiming all sorts of things, accusing Netflix of misrepresentation of Egyptian history, of Egyptian facts and all of that. This made me remember the quote by Chinua Achebe, who said, a man who did not know where the rain started beating him can't tell where his body began to dry. So the battle for, historical preservation, cultural preservation is such a big deal, because if you do not know who you are, then you stand a risk of alienation, basically. Why? Your culture is your identity. Your history is your identity. It basically sums up everything about who you are, where you come from, where you are going, what you believe in, what you do not believe in, and essentially everything about your existence. And that's the reason why people are making concerted efforts to refute certain historical claims as being presented in modern day, because the truth is, it's a battle for superiority. It's a battle for, asserting who people think they are, okay? Follow me, we are getting somewhere. So, I said earlier that based on historical and archaeological facts, Egypt was occupied by black people. It was the land of black people. But when you look at Egypt today, it is a sharp contrast to these historical claims. Why? Because at some point in the history of Egypt, certain people came to Egypt, invaded Egypt, and, ruled Egypt for over a period of time. And in the course of ruling, certain aspects of Egyptian history was gradually replaced and rewritten. So when you look at Egypt today, it's a far cry from what it was, okay? It's a far cry from what it was. Now, when some people, or even the younger generations and generations to come after us, might struggle to believe the fact that Egypt was once what it was, which was a land of black people, because the people you see there are majority are Arabs, and the black Egyptians are silent. Nothing is said about them as much, even though they are still there till today, okay? That's why people are making concerted efforts to criticize a documentary as Cleopatra that seems to tell a different narrative. Like I said earlier, whether Cleopatra was black or of Caucasian origin is not the focus of this video. The focus of this video is that we have to own and tell our stories. We have to own our stories, our narratives, and tell them as they are, regardless of who we are, whether we are black, white, green, yellow, brown, any color, any people, regardless of our ethnic origins, of our race or our nationality. It is important to tell our stories. Again, Chinua Achebe once said, if the people do not have historians, then the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunters. That is what has happened. Black history, African history has been distorted, has been tampered with, has been erased to a certain degree that certain aspects of our history as black people, as Africans, is questioned. Because we are not telling our stories enough. We are not owning our stories. Imagine, as a Nigerian, I went to school, and many Nigerians watching this video will agree with me. We were taught in school that River Niger was discovered by Mungo Park, some European explorer. You would ask, we believe this, okay? We believe this. Because that was what we were told, we believe this. But, the more conscious we are becoming as a people, we are questioning this. Because are you trying to tell us that our people who lived around the river, who fished in the river, who drank from the river, didn't know anything about the river and waited until some European explorer from somewhere came and discovered River Niger? So for those of you who do not know, River Niger is the third longest river in Africa. We were taught in school that it was discovered by Mungo Park, a European explorer. You see? So that's taking power from people and assigning that power to some people else, making a certain people, us, feel inferior. Because we were actually fishing from that river, drinking from it. Our ancestors, our forebears, used water from that river. But we were taught that that river was discovered by some European who came from somewhere. This is how you take power from people and give it to other people and make some certain people feel powerless, simply by telling their story or their history in a distorted manner. That is what we need to stop. We need to own our narratives and tell our stories as they are. Else, we'll remain powerless. When you strip a man of his history, of his identity, of his achievements, then you leave that person powerless. You leave that person in a perpetual state of inferiority. That is what we need to stop. What am I saying in essence? Let's own our narratives. Let's document and tell our stories to the minutest details, okay? As an African, as a black person, as an African person, as a Tiv person, Igbo, Yoruba, any of whatever ethnic origin or race, tell your story. If your people eat certain things, document it, tell the story, let people see it, own it with pride. Because centuries, generations and generations after we have gone, our children will be told that your parents did this, your parents didn't do this, your parents didn't do that. Meanwhile, we are existing here, we are upholding our cultures, we are doing, like you see now, some of our cultural artifacts are sitting in some museum somewhere in Europe and, in the West. Take power from people and assign it to other people and leave them powerless. That's how you keep people in a perpetual state of subjection and you keep oppressing them. We need to tell our stories. Today, the story, the outrage, about Cleopatra's documentary has gone on for days. People are taking actions, they are speaking up, trying to reclaim their story, emphasizing and asserting the fact that Cleopatra was of Greek origin, was not black. That's fine. Like I said, it's not really the subject of this conversation. But black people, African people, let's also own our stories. When our stories are misrepresented, when our histories and our cultures are misrepresented, let's keep our histories and our stories and our cultures and tell the facts as they are. In the Ten Commandments, despite the misrepresentation of historical facts by casting Queen Nefertiti as a European and Pharaoh as a European, there was silence. Silence. Nobody spoke up to correct that historical misrepresentation. But you see now the reverse is the case. We are our own problem, black people, African people. We are our problem. We do not own our narratives enough. We do not tell our stories enough. And as long as we keep giving our power to other people, they keep telling our stories the way that pleases them, which is what Chinua Achebe's quote said. Let's own our stories and tell our stories as they are. I remember, I think a few months back, Kevin Hart also received a fair share of his own backlash, where he said that Egypt was originally, occupied by black people, people that looked like me, people that looked like him. He faced the backlash, from Egyptians, from other people who felt like he shouldn't say it. But that's the fact. That's the fact. But there's this constant effort to rewrite the story and the history of Egypt to make it not look like black people once lived there, because it is a civilization that spans centuries and centuries, and it's so magnificent. At the point, Egypt was the most powerful civilization in the world. So some people cannot fathom the fact that that was actually occupied by black people. Why? Because they need to take power from you and ascribe it to other people, thereby making you feel powerless, making you remain in a perpetual state of inferiority complex, thereby asserting their own superiority on you. But that's not the fact, okay? I remember some time ago when I started traveling across Africa, when I went to Congo, I shared in some of my videos the fact that I felt a certain connection to Congo. Yes, that came about because someone asked me, why did I choose to visit Congo? Because Congo wasn't a country, or it's not a country that many people go for obvious reasons, one of which is the fact that, people speak French. French is like the lingua franca, or the national language there. And I'm from English-speaking Nigeria. I went there because I told them I went there because I felt a certain connection to Congo. Because according to the stories that my grandfather and my father, all of blessed memories, told me, and the history that I read, is that our people, the Tiv people of Benue State, Nigeria, West Africa, migrated from Congo and made their way through treacherous terrains until they finally got to present-day Benue State and settled there in Benue State, Nigeria, West Africa. And then someone was quick to correct me, no, that's not right. You shouldn't say that. You cannot say migration happened that way. Uncle, brother, This is the story and the history that my ancestors told me. Mind you, this person that was quick to correct me is not from Benue State. He's not a thief person. He's not from Benue State. He's not from Nigeria. But he was quick to correct the history and the story of my own people's existence. You see, but I stood my ground and I insisted that this, what I've said, is the accurate story and historical facts about our own people, my people, the thief people of Benue State, Nigeria, West Africa. So we have to assert our position and tell our stories. Else, people will be quick to correct us and distort our story and rewrite it to suit certain narratives that suit them. Wake up, African people. You might say, what's the big deal? It's a big deal because the struggle to preserve your stories, your identity, your culture, and your histories is a struggle for self-preservation. I mean, today we have great empires that are non-existent today. We had the Songhai Empire, the Great Mali Empire, the Nubian Empire. All of those empires are non-existent today. Even though we have some descendants from those empires, they seem almost non-existent today and so powerless. You hear almost next to nothing about them except for some historical relics that were preserved somehow. You become non-existent if you fail to document your stories and your cultures. You become non-existent. Like we are told today that the richest person to ever walk the surface of this earth was a black man, Mansa Musa, from the Great Mali Empire. Trust me, one day we might wake up and we'll be told something else. But you see, that is why it is important to preserve our story. Now we have Dangote as the richest black man or the richest black African and all of that. Tomorrow the story might change. We just need to own our narratives and tell them, because telling our stories as they are accurately is taking back our power, owning our power, controlling our narratives, and forging a sense of pride, a sense of identity, a sense of dignity and power. That is very, very, very important. Share this story, yo. Tell the story of your culture, of your food, the clothes you wear, the makeup you wear, everything. Tomorrow they will tell our generations unborn that we were probably non-existent, and that's not true. Okay? I'm Virtue Grace, the African storyteller. I do travel videos, lifestyle videos, and I tell stories like this to incite a sense of identity and pride and action in you. So thank you for watching. I made an introduction. That's if you're coming for the first time and you are seeing me for the first time. Have you subscribed? If you've not, kindly click on that subscribe button. When you do, tap on the bell and select all. That way you will always be the first to know when I post a new video or I do a live stream. For those of you Vet Loves returning, thank you very much. I love you guys so much. I'll see you in my next video, okay? Share this video. Until then, stay safe, healthy, below abiding. Virtue Grace, the African storyteller. Bye. Mwah.